You guys are underdogs for this game, Nick. What's your reaction to that?
Again, not going to get wrapped into what anybody else thinks of us, whether that's another team, whether that's, whoever makes the spreads or anything like that. We just worry about going to work for ourselves. But I think going into last year and the year before that, no one really thought we would be any good. And I think that it's okay. It's okay to be the underdog of the city. I said on the radio the other day, like, before I ever stepped foot in this city, all I knew about this city was Rocky versus Apollo Creed, and this city plays the underdog well.
Nick Sirianni, the Eagles coach, talking about the fact that the Eagles, despite having the best record in the NFL, are 3-point underdogs at home against the 49ers. Yesterday, Peter, we had a clip from Kyle Shanahan, who seems a little agitated by the fact that the 49ers are favored. What you're doing is you're taking away his ability to say they don't believe in us, and you're handing it to the team that is 10-1. And Sirianni, behind closed doors when he's talking to his team, he's not saying what he said yesterday. He's saying some of it, but the big point is they don't believe in us. They still don't believe in us. We have to earn everything we get. We have to prove everything we do. They think everything we do is a fluke, yada, 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 and he gets his team worked up into a frenzy that creates an edge for them. Being the underdog creates an edge for them versus the 49ers not having that tool available to Kyle Shanahan.
Look, Mike, I think when I look at that line, I think of two things. That betting lines are made to make sure that there's either equal or close to equal money on each side of the bet. A lot of people betting Philly, a lot of people betting San Francisco. But I think in this particular case, the one thing that people are not thinking about is that, look, as Jason Kelce told me basically after the game last week, he said, man, we were terrible in the first half. We couldn't get anything going. But we still thought we were going to play well in the second half and have a really good chance to win because that's who we are. And sometimes it's not about how impressive you look. It's not about sort of the football beauty contest. It's just, to me, I think I can't get it in my head, no matter how good I've seen the 49ers play since their 3-game losing streak. But in my head, beating Dallas 42-10 and just blowing teams away at various points of this season, particularly recently, where, Brock Purdy is playing the most effective football by far, that he can play by far since any quarterback named Steve Young or Joe Montana roamed the 49ers sidelines. So I kind of look at all this, Mike, that I'm saying and just say, I get it that the 49ers look so impressive when they're healthy. I get it. But, man, you've got to look at what the Philadelphia Eagles have done and how tough a team they are, just how physically tough, how mentally tough they are. And it's so hard for me to imagine them not being favored at home in a game where, and again, I'm going to say something now that to me, probably you shouldn't think about, but I do. Just think about the tenor of that crowd. 4:25 Eastern time game. Those guys, those men and women and adolescents of a certain age are going to have all day to get ready for that game. This is going to be a decibel football game. And I'll tell you what, if the 49ers go in there and win, man, God bless them. That'll be one of the great wins that Kyle Shanahan's ever had.
Tenor, shorthand for blood alcohol concentration, after they're out in the parking lot all day long getting themselves ready to be in full throat and full support of the Philadelphia Eagles. But you're right. It's a tough environment for anyone to play in, and it helps fuel the Eagles do what we saw them do on Sunday. 4 straight games now. They've been trailing at halftime, and they found a way to come back and win the game. They are resilient. They are Rocky Balboa. I've said that several times throughout the year.
They are.
The question is, Clubber Lang is showing up this weekend. And now, Clubber Lang from the first fight, not the second one, but the first fight with Clubber Lang. And you hit the nail on the head with the 49ers. When they're healthy, they're the best team in football. And it's not even close. But the thing that makes them great is the thing that makes them susceptible to getting their core players injured, which makes them vulnerable to losing. And that's one of the things we have to keep in mind in this game. 49ers come in healthy, but does somebody get injured during the game? And we know injuries happen in football, and we don't sit around and try to predict when they're going to happen. But when you have a team that is rough and tumble, run through the wall, going against a team that's developing into a fairly bitter rival in what could be the game of the year in the regular season that could determine where the rematch is going to occur in the postseason, there's going to be an extra level of physicality going both ways, Peter. I mean, this has got the potential to be old school, dial up the YouTube videos of the 70s and the 80s. When you watch those old games, you realize how much safer football has become relative to how it used to be. This just feels like it's going to be one of those old school 70s, 80s, 90s games between a couple of teams that are beginning to hate each other and that are going to play with a degree of physical brute force violence that we don't see in a typical game. And if that natural process gets a couple of 49ers injured, I feel like the Eagles can withstand that with their depth better than the 49ers can.
Look, there's no question, Mike. Right now, the biggest enemy of the San Francisco 49ers, and let's not even include home field in this discussion. The biggest enemy of the San Francisco 49ers, because this is a team that can go anywhere and win a game if it's healthy. But obviously the biggest enemy is, injured reserve, guys out for a game or two or three. But you saw what happened when Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams were gone. And you saw a 3-game losing streak. And so to me, there is a double-edged sword coming into this game for Philadelphia. And I believe coming into the last 6 games of the season for San Francisco. And that is very simply that among the truly great teams in football, the teams at the very top of the heap, I think there's no team that's game, that has a game as susceptible to getting guys hurt because they play so physically. And the recent history is that guys get hurt in that scheme. So to me, I look at this game and I say, 49ers, be careful what you wish for. If you come out of this with a win, but you come out of this with 2 guys gone for the next month, I mean, that is a really be careful what you wish for game.
And look, there continues to be a thought within the organization that if Brock Purdy doesn't get injured on kind of a fluky play early in the NFC Championship, Hassan Reddick comes around the end, hits his arm when it's up in passing formation. Purdy suffers the elbow injury, and it felt for a while, even after that injury, that the 49ers are going to find a way to win it. It obviously didn't happen. The Eagles run away with it 31-7, but now Purdy comes back to the place where that injury occurred. Here he is talking about the return to Lincoln Financial Field where that fateful moment happened back in January.
I mean, yeah, I got hurt there and everything, but for me, it's week 13. We're going on the road in a hostile environment. We're late in the season, so every game is obviously big for us. We're going to go in there and get all, sentimental about, man, I've come a long way since. It's not really like that. We have a goal in mind, and I'm trying to be the best version of myself every week. So am I going to go into the game saying I want revenge and all this kind of stuff? It's not like that, So I'm just going to try to go do my job and be the best Brock that I can be for this team.
Backward hat alert. Wasn't there a hot take artist out there at one point that said a quarterback who wears his hat backward isn't a real leader or something like that? Regardless.
Yeah, I'll tell you who that was, Mike. You know who that was? It was Ronnie the prop comic.
Okay. I don't think it was him. But regardless, I remember that narrative, like about Baker Mayfield or somebody. Oh, you're wearing your hat backwards. You're not a real quarterback. Brock Purdy, a real quarterback, and he's played incredibly well when he's got all of his pieces. The losing streak happened, like you said, when Deebo Samuel was hurt and Trent Williams was hurt. And you're right. They emptied the tank in this one to beat the Eagles. And this is what's amazing to me and makes the story so much more compelling. The 49ers don't even care. It's almost like they don't even see the connection, the cause and effect. We're going to come out here and we're going to do everything we can to kick your ass. Oh, but you know what? You may get some key guys injured in the process. We don't care. And it's not even we don't care. It's like, no, we won't. What are you talking about? That doesn't happen. There's no causal link between the two. It's amazing to me. And it's what makes them great, but it's what makes them susceptible to not being great. Their greatness comes from that reckless renegade mentality that, and you see it, Deebo Samuel fighting for that extra inch. Somebody comes and hits him. Oh, and now he's on the sideline in the blue medical tent. Well, if he hadn't been fighting for that extra inch, it wouldn't have happened. But that's the way they play, and they're never going to stop that. I respect it. On one hand, I say, do you not realize A leads to B? But they don't care. Yeah. They just don't care.
Well, Mike, I think they care. No question about it. However, do they think, okay, because there's a risk of injury here, we're going to change the way we play? No. And that is the difference to me. And I'll just say one other thing. I've been saying basically since early in this season that one of the things that I do, if I'm Kyle Shanahan, is try to spot, some of the backup guys, even in important situations, for guys like Deebo Samuel, for guys like Brandon Ayuk. And I know that that's counterintuitive to saying, we got to win the game this week. All that matters is this week. I get it. But with the 49ers, all that matters isn't this week. What matters is the big picture in knowing that if you go in without two of your weapons on January 14th or whatever the first day of the playoffs is, if you start the playoffs without two of your big weapons, you're probably not going to accomplish your big goal this year.
And somewhere on Sunday, once, twice, or maybe 3 or 4 times, Sir Isaac Newton, wherever he is right now, will be tuning into the game to see the irresistible force and the immovable object come together when the Eagles hunker down for their brotherly shove, tush push, whatever you want to call it. Of all the teams out there that will be willing to roll up their sleeves and meet brute force with brute force, it's the 49ers. And Peter, Sims and I talked about this yesterday. The 49ers are at a disadvantage. All defenses are at a disadvantage because they can't practice this. Shanahan joked, oh, yeah, we're going to do it live 10 times today, and we'll see who's left when we're done. You can't practice it. The Eagles practice it in games every week. They sharpen it in games every week. The defenses individually never see it. But if they're ever going to see anyone, when you consider that defense they have, if they're going to ever see anyone that's in a position to try to push back as hard as possible and maybe have some success, it's this defense they're going to see on Sunday.
Yeah, and I also think, Mike, that when you look at, because I think both teams are capable of playing a real physical game and winning, but I think the 49ers, look, I forget the exact circumstances, and I really should have looked it up because I know, obviously, we were going to be talking about it. But remember last year, the 49ers on one of the 4th and 1s stopped the Eagles, on one of those plays. And so, they're not, I don't think they're intimidated at all by the tush push. I think they've got a fighting chance to stop it. I also think that, there has been such a tremendous emphasis on, and attention on the tush push so far this season that I think sometimes we, obscure a few other factors in this game. And the one factor I wanted to mention before we got off this game is that I think when you look at what Brock Purdy has done, one thing that has really impressed me is that, remember, Mike, he had the real, he's really only had one, what I would call debacle game this year. And that's the Cleveland game. And obviously he threw 2 picks against Minnesota in Minnesota, huge causal picks to that game, to losing that game at Minnesota. And yes, he did lose to Joe Burrow at home. But I'll just say this. What really impresses me right now about Brock Purdy is that, and I figured this out the other day when I was thinking about this game. Over the last 5 games, he's completed 73% of his passes. Okay, and that's not just, ridiculously huge. I get it. But there's one other thing about the way he has played recently. Okay, in those last 5 games, his yards per attempt in those last 5 games, have been 9, 11.8, 11.4, 13.3 against Tampa, and then 7 last week against Seattle. So you look at it and you say, he is not a dink and dunker. This guy is making sure that his receivers are getting the ball downfield. And so don't be calling Brock Purdy, a guy who, he's a system quarterback, just moving the chains. He's so much more than that. He's so much better than that. And his receivers right now, quite honestly, are all the better for it. I mean, look at, this hit me in the face. How about Brandon Ayuk? 19.6 yards per catch. I mean, Mike, this passing game is not just an efficient passing game. This passing game is an explosive passing game. And I think the sooner people realize that, the sooner they will know that if these guys stay healthy, you are going to have to stop that explosive passing game to beat the San Francisco 49ers.
You use the term system quarterback, and Chris and I have had this conversation before. We don't believe system quarterback is a pejorative thing. Game manager is. System quarterback, in our view, isn't, because Purdy is the perfect quarterback for Kyle Shanahan's system. And Kyle Shanahan's system, in a nutshell, goes like this. Just run the plays that I'm calling. Make the reads that I've coached you to make. Throw the ball where I've told you to throw the ball, and good things will happen. And it's easier said than done, because you got some quarterbacks that can't process the way that the coach wants them to, or they'll be tempted to freelance or try to buy a little time with their legs. Purdy does exactly what Shanahan wants him to do in that system. He's the perfect quarterback for that system. He's a system quarterback. The system run to perfection allows these ungodly numbers. I remember when it was a big deal if you averaged 7 yards per attempt. Back when that first came into focus as a stat that we on the outside realized that the folks on the inside put a lot of weight in that. If you're getting 7, 8, 9 yards per attempt, you're moving the ball. To get to double digits, which we see not infrequently now, but the numbers you rattled off, that's a system that's working. And finally, after all this quarterback carousel in San Francisco, whether it's health, whether it's ineffectiveness, whether it's whatever, Shanahan's finally got a guy who can do exactly what he wants. And it just so happened he was the last guy taken in the draft in 2022.
There's a certain amount of if you were the quarterback starting for an NFL team and you're playing well and you're young, there is a certain amount of, we'll see ism about it. And I think we're getting to the point now. And look, if you look at any number of throws, but he's made a couple of throws where the word in the NFL, the popular word right now, is layered throws. And what that basically is that you throw it over a guy who is right in front of your receiver, a defender who's in front of your receiver, and you're layering the ball over that guy to get it to your own guy. And he has made some highlight throws while layering the ball. You know, the long touchdown pass last week to Ayuk is one of them. But he's also done it a couple of times in the end zone this year. The one time where Kyle Shanahan said, no, 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 yes. And so he's done it a few times. But that is what makes Brock Purdy different. And that is what makes anybody who might criticize him and bring up the let's wait and see-ism, you know, and that is what people, I think, miss. You miss it if you don't see the challenging throws that he is making in traffic, not just darts at guys who are open or throwing to a spot where his guy is going to be. He has made some of the best throws of this year by any quarterback in traffic, purposeful throws. And look, he's had a couple of interceptions that look terrible, look ugly, but you know what? The great ones have always done that. And we'll see if he can make, you know, if he can continue this, you know, going forward. And this is a huge test for him on Sunday. But I'd say, you know, 90% of the time, Brock Purdy has not only passed the tests so far, he has aced the tests.
Because Peter has a flight to catch, we only have him for one more segment. And what we will be doing before we bid him farewell and safe travels is doing the Show Me Something draft for Week 13. We'll do that next here on this Friday edition of PFT Live. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.